Alright, yo, it's your boy Stacks. On this episode, we buy a 2006 Chrysler 300C. It's one of the cars that have been on my bucket list for a long time. This one does have the 5.7 liter HEMI V8. We bought it for $1,400. We saved a lot of money by getting a U-Haul truck and towing it back home ourselves. So I'm picking up the car now. 2006 Chrysler 300C Heritage. This thing is really clean. Probably the cleanest one I've seen over the years. It's packed in between a bunch of cars right now in this lot. A mechanic shop right here. So we're just trying to wait to get all this stuff out of the way, and then we can move this thing out onto my U-Haul trailer right there. Chevy Silverado. I got a tow dolly on it. This is the setup. Got the Chrysler loaded up. I put it on the back wheels. I read something online. Apparently the transmission might have a problem if you try to tow it from the front. It's towing pretty good so far. So yeah, hopefully everything goes smoothly. Check you out when you get home. Alright boys, I finished dropping off the car at my place. Impressions of this truck, Chevy Silverado, I don't know what trim level or whatever. This thing towed awesome. It handles like a car. The suspension is nice and tight, the steering's nice and tight. It's not all raggedy like the older trucks, and there's not like stuff going all over the place. So those are my impressions of this truck. Towed awesome, 5 out of 5. The reason I got this car so cheap was one of the valve seats dropped out. Very common issue in the 2006 to 10 HEMIs. The reason it happens is because of the thermal characteristics of the different metals. The valve seat is steel, the cylinder head is aluminum. The different thermal characteristics, they expand at different rates. You guys know how it works. So the valve seat falls out if you try to restart the engine while it's still hot, or it has a higher potential to fall out if you restart the engine while it's still hot. So as far as prevention goes, I've read some forums, people try putting colder thermostats in the engine or this and that. I haven't seen any conclusive solutions to this issue. My recommendation, and this is my recommendation, so take it for what you will. Just try not, if you have a HEMI vehicle, avoid having to restart the engine while it's hot, within 45 minutes of you shutting it off. So if you have a HEMI vehicle, I would avoid using it to do anything like delivery work, doing stuff like DoorDash, Uber Eats, things like that. But again, that's just my theory, so it's whatever. But anyway, we bought this car. It's a 2006 Chrysler 300C Heritage Edition. It is a special edition model, one of the rare ones. It has a nice pearl color. The body is immaculate. The interior has a couple cuts on the seats or whatever, but besides that, there was nothing wrong with this car. Besides the engine, the car didn't run. It had no compression in one of the cylinders. So that's what happened. Valve seat fell out on the previous owner, crushed the piston, ruined the cylinder head. There are two ways to fix this issue. You can replace the engine, or you can do what I did, which is cheaper, which is swap out the cylinder head and pop in a new piston. throw in a new head gasket, and you're back on the road. I just rented this compression tester from O'Reilly's because I own a compression tester, but mine's tucked away in boxes. I tried digging it out and I can't find it. So save time, I bought this. I want to do a compression test, find out which cylinder head is bad, which cylinder head has the problem, and we can start tearing that one apart. But first, before that, inside the vehicle, we have all the spark plugs the previous owner took out and all the coil packs. These are only 8 of the spark plugs. And as you can see, 2 of them are smashed, which is indicative of a valve seat drop. So you can see the spark plugs are super old. Yeah. The rest of the spark plugs look fine as far as there are no physical deformations. It's just these 2 spark plugs which are smashed. So I need to find out which cylinder these came from, and I'm gonna do that through the compression test. Alright folks, that was a long morning. Got the engine took apart. Or at least I got the cylinder head off. And as you can see, sure enough, that's what we all came here to see. You know, cylinder 1 on bank 2. It's all mangled up, the valve seat dropped out, and everything got smashed up in there. However, thankfully, my finger doesn't even catch on anything in the cylinder wall. Like, it barely catches over here. But I'm talking barely, like I can barely feel it with my fingernail. So I'm gonna hone that out. I'm gonna run to the junkyard, get a replacement piston and a replacement cylinder head. If I can't find a good one at the junkyard, I'm just gonna go to another auto recycler or whatever and just grab another one. I'm not gonna do any of the machine shop or anything like that. But anyway, the goal for this car is to get it doing burnouts as quickly and as cheaply as possible. So if you all like the sound of that, y'all stay tuned. This job was pretty simple. We knocked it out in about 4 days. We had to pull off the cylinder head, drop the oil pan. We could unbolt the connecting rod, pop out the piston, pop in a new piston, and slap on the cylinder head with a new head gasket, and voila, we're back on the road. My goal for this car was to do everything quickly and cheaply. I didn't want to order anything online, especially with the whole supply chain issues. Everything is super backed up. Ah, shoot. I just missed my way, boys. Okay. Yeah. Alrighty. So yeah, with all the supply chain issues, I didn't want to order anything online. I wanted to be able to get all the parts I needed from the junkyard or the parts stores. So that's exactly what I did. Saved a ton of money and a ton of time. I got a piston from the junkyard. I got it out of a 2008 Jeep Grand Cherokee with the same engine. The piston was exactly the same. It was in good condition. I actually tried to get the cylinder head off that Jeep, but the cylinder head had the same exact issue as what happened on our car. The valve seat dropped out. But I was able to get one of the pistons out, so that was fine. The junkyard charged me more than I wanted, like $30. I was a little surprised. I was hoping it would be like less than 20, but it was whatever. If I would have ordered it online, it would have been about $65, and it would have only been the piston. It wouldn't have had the connecting rod attached to it. That saved me some time and money as well, so I didn't have to go get a hydraulic press. Oh, wow. Picking up where we left off yesterday, I went to the junkyard last night, picked up this piston. I took the cylinder head off a 2008 Jeep Grand Cherokee with this same engine. The cylinder head was junk, had the same exact problem as this one. I wasn't surprised by that, but I did need to get the piston. The junkyard charged more than I was expecting, but it is what it is. I still got the piston, and the connecting rod is attached, so I don't need to go to I don't need to go to a machine shop and borrow their hydraulic press, anything like that. It's already good to go. Everything's the same, and yeah, I just took off the old piston. This is the piston that came out of this car right here. So yeah, valve seat drop. It's all smashed up. Pretty awful. This piston is completely destroyed. So yeah, there's your problem, lady, as they say. I might keep this one as a souvenir. I don't know, but I got the piston. I guess you could say we're at the halfway point, really. We're basically almost ready to start putting stuff back together. All we really need to do so far is hone this cylinder. I rented a cylinder hone last night, so I have that ready to go. I also have the piston installer, so I don't need to get the rings caught up and gouge up the cylinder walls. To get the piston out, had to drop the oil pan, obviously. I wasn't able to get the oil pan all the way off. That was there was just not enough space. I dropped the steering rack, and then I was able to undo this. I unbolted the oil pan, then I unbolted the pickup tube so I could, get this oil pan dropped a little bit lower. And then I put a jack under the transmission over there, like right at the transmission bell housing, and jacked it up as much as I could. And yeah, that's pretty much all the space I could get. I really wish I could get this oil pan all the way off, because I really wanted to clean out the inside of the oil pan just in case, but it is what it is. I'll take my chances. But everything looks really nice. I'm surprised how well the inside of the engine looks, considering everything. And I also want to show, these are the rod bearings. The top rod bearing is usually the worst. As you can see, it's not bad at all. It has a couple spots on it, but no big deal. We're gonna reuse it. We're not doing a rebuild or anything like that. The bottom one is mint. They both look good. So yeah, I see no problem with reusing these. And going back to the cylinder again, as I talked about before, I can barely feel anything with my finger. My fingernail barely catches on the cylinder wall. So we're gonna hone this out and start putting things back together. And I also completely forgot to tell you all about what's going on the opposite side of this cylinder head. As you can see, valve seat dropped out. You can see where it fell out. Right in between there. Mangled up the whole combustion chamber. Another thing I know to pay attention to is that intake manifold. Bits of the valve seat or piston or whatever can come up into that intake. I did wiggle it around after I took it out, and there is a piece of valve seat in that. I could hear it when I was shaking it around, so I need to make absolutely sure I clean that out. If you're doing this job and you don't want to take any chances, just replace the whole intake manifold. But I'm trying to save as much money as possible, so I'm not going to. If you don't clean it out, that piece of valve seat is going to come back in and smash up another piston. Yeah, so I popped in the piston. I reused the rod bearings. The rod bearings were in perfect condition, especially considering it has 144,000 miles. The previous owner drove this thing hard. It had a straight pipe on it. The previous owner did burnouts and stuff like that. He drove it pretty hard. And yeah, you have to drive them hard, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you don't drive a car hard sometimes, like, you get a whole bunch of cold built up on the intake valves, and the car starts running like doo-doo. I'm gonna call it quits with the cylinder honing. I got it as best as I could. I've been going at it for about half an hour. The only really bad part is right there. You can barely feel it. It looks a lot worse than it really is. Like, you can barely feel something, you know. Even with your fingernail or your finger, you can barely feel it, but it's there. From my experience with cylinder honing, you're not gonna get every single scratch. This car has 140,000 miles on it. We're not trying to make this thing perfect. As it is right there, this engine has a lot of life left in it. I know there are some people who are gonna say, oh, you need to pull the engine, send it to a machine shop and have it bored out and all this. But I'm telling you, it's fine. The rest of the cylinder is in really good shape. We deglazed it, got the cross hatching back in there. This one should not be an oil burner. I don't think this engine should be an oil burner. I just need to finish cleaning off this piston and get it popped back in the cylinder. All right, folks, I got this piston looking as good as it's gonna get. Took it inside, used hot water and soap, and yeah, it's pretty much spotless. I mean, besides there's a little bit of coal and, you know, in some places that don't really matter. I focused on these piston rings. I got the top of the piston looking good. Everything's pretty much looking good. I also made sure to wash out as best I could these piston ring grooves and the oil ring grooves, so I don't want those all gunked up. I had to do as good as a job as I could without removing the piston rings, because I can't afford to have any of these break, because that would just be a nightmare. I'd have to probably go to the dealership, because I don't know if parts stores sell piston rings individually. But the next step now is to get the piston rings oriented properly and get it popped in there. I'm going to douse the cylinder wall with oil, just regular engine oil. I don't know how you guys do it. Some people say you have to put it in dry. Some people say you got to put it in oil, and this is the way I do it, and I didn't have a problem last time I did it, so. right, it's in there. It's gonna, yeah, that's seated really nicely. All right, so now I'm just gonna get the bottom end back together, torque the rod cap bolts to its specification, get the bottom end put back together, and then we can get back to this top end and get the cylinder head, put it on, and hopefully have this thing driving pretty soon. After that, I got the oil pickup tube and the oil pan back bolted up, got the cylinder head back on. I got the cylinder head used from a guy locally about a half hour away from where I was, so that was awesome. It was a low mileage cylinder head. I got it for $100. All right, folks, it's the next day. It's actually the next afternoon again. Day 3, so I've done a bit of work off camera, cleaned off the tops of the cylinders. And yeah, that's the top side. As far as the bottom, got everything on the bottom buttoned up. Oil pans back up, steering racks back up. I also changed the oil filter. All we got left is, after I slap the new cylinder head on, then we can bolt up the downpipe and drop this car back on the ground. Here are the parts we got. New Felpro head gasket. Looks exactly the same as the OEM one. Got this cylinder head on Facebook Marketplace, actually. I got this one for a smoking deal. Got it for $100. It hasn't been machined or anything. It's exactly the same. It came off a 2006 Dodge Charger. The story is a relative of the previous owner had to get rid of a bunch of stuff. He was gonna scrap it all. This was one of the stuff that they didn't want to scrap or whatever, so they figured they could get something for it. So allegedly, according to him, it's a low mileage head. All he did was wash it. It hasn't been machined. It hasn't been really touched at all. Everything checks out. It all looks good. None of the, usually when you get these used heads, what you want to check for is you want to make sure that none of the valve seats are like kind of falling out, because usually you could see it. You could see, like, especially on these intake valves, you can see that some of them, on some other heads, not this one, but some other one, like the valve seat is like halfway out, kind of like it's about to fall out. So you want to pay attention to that. Here's that head gasket, by the way. Exactly the same. Yeah, I was really happy I got this thing for only $100, because a lot of the used ones I saw, they were like, you know, $200 minimum, and I had to go drive like an hour and a half, 2 hours away to the nearest place that had them. All we got left to do now is to reassemble this cylinder head and put it back on the engine. Okay, it's time to put the head on. Cylinder head surface is clean. Block surface is clean. Time to slap the head gasket on and put the head on. It's the next day. I got the rockers and I got the push rods in and the rockers torqued down this morning. I'm turning over the engine now, making sure everything's good. Well, we're on the final stretch here. I'm just getting ready to put the rocker cover back on. Let's get this thing finished up. Got everything, like the push rods and the rockers and stuff like that. Got that all put back together. And yeah, oh, we had to clean out the intake manifold. When the valve seats drop out on these HEMI engines, a lot of pieces of valve seat will go back up into this intake manifold. And if you don't clean that out, it'll go back in the engine and crush one of the pistons and mess up one of the valves. And you have to do everything all over again. So I made sure to, hey, take it easy, man. Damn. Okay. So I made sure to take care of that again. Sorry, guys. some guy driving crazy. So yeah, I made sure to get the intake manifold perfect. I've heard some people say you can't get them perfect, blah, blah, blah. You have to replace the intake manifold. I didn't replace it. I didn't want to spend that kind of money. It would have been about $200 or something, or whatever. I cleaned it out. I went, got some gasoline, swished some gasoline in the... I went back and forth through there with a little magnet on a stick. Made sure I got all the pieces of metal out of there. And there was quite a bit of metal that was in that intake manifold. I went to Harbor Freight this morning, got this telescoping magnet, and I'm going into all these intake runners and fishing out all the pieces of metal. And yep, there it is, got another piece of metal out of that intake. But that was that. I slapped the intake manifold back on and the car ran like a champ. This thing started right up. Yeah, it's gonna smoke for a little bit after everything that happened. All the oil in the cylinders and in the exhaust and everything. But the exhaust sounds nasty. I mean, this thing. And the catalytic converters are still in there too, so you know, it's all good to go. Let me check the gauge cluster. We got gas. This engine sounds super smooth considering everything that happened to it. All you can hear up here is the fuel injectors, that's it. Okay, I need to bleed the coolant, and I'll get back to you after that. The thing about this project I've done so far, with everything I've talked about so far, I didn't replace a single thing I didn't have to. I don't want to get sucked into that whole like, while you're in there, you may as well do this and that. It's easy to get sucked into that because you end up spending a lot more money than you want to in the long run. It's like, okay, while you're in there, I may as well replace the lifters and the push rods, and I may as well throw a camshaft in there while I'm in, like, you know what I mean? Well, yeah, the car ran good. It was super loud because the previous owner had a straight pipe on it, if I haven't mentioned that already, and it runs really good. But this is going to be a stopping point for this episode. We're going to get back to you later with the rest of the story of how we got the car back together the rest of the way. As for now, I'm grinding. I hope you all are doing the same. You all stay strong, stay healthy, stay inspired. I'm out. God bless.